where I would say I was pretty arrogant. And, I never had a beer on the golf course, never even had a drink. And, I was so focused on that being, proving myself in that way, that became my identity. And, if I didn't have a good round, or if I struggled on the golf course, it was like, well, who are you now? Like if you aren't this great player, somebody who everyone's like looking to be this great player, well, who actually are you?
Even if you're not a golfer, you're going to take so much great information from this conversation with Kevin McNee. He is a former pro golfer, and he's going to share a heap of great strategies for golf, but also for every area of your life, including being able to manage your emotions on the golf course as well. He's also a great storyteller, and one of the great stories you're going to love is one that he shares about Jack Nicklaus and the level of focus that he had. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. Kevin, how are you, my man?
Doing, like I said, it's a big question, but I'm doing pretty great overall. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we won't dig into whatever that means from your answer, because we want to get into the nuts and bolts of your story from that sport perspective. Now, as someone who dabbles in golf and would call myself extremely amateur, always looking to improve, I love hearing from people who have actually played at an elite level and picking their brain on how you make that work. So that was you, right? Like you become a really young golf pro, but let's go right back. How do you end up, one, getting into golf, and then two, realizing that you're actually pretty good at this?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story, because where I grew up was a town of 1,200 people till I was about 12 years old, and we never had a golf course.
Yeah, right.
So we would have to drive about an hour and a half to another town that had a golf course where we would go camping and fishing and play golf. There was a golf course where you could pay, I think it was $12 for a kid, and you could play all day. So I just, I would go, and I would just go round and round and round and round. And I remember one time I started when I was about 11 years old. And I remember one time at 11 years old, I played 79 holes.
What?
And I know that doesn't add up when you multiply it by 9. It was a 9-hole golf course. But by the time we hit that 79th hole, man, we were just like burnt out. But we were getting fed hot dogs and stuff like that at the turn every time we went by. And yeah, just anytime I could, we just played round and round and round. And just, I just loved the game. And that's really how I got started.
Was there, like, you got to get clubs or something? Was there like your dad nudging you or your mum nudging you, or like?
Yeah, my dad always said that it was an old person's sport, and he's like, why in the fuck would I want to chase a little white ball around a stupid, field, right?
Yeah.
That was his answer, until he tried it and like literally fell in love with it. And just like, I mean, and so many people that are listening that that play, golf is an obsession. It's either you love it or you hate it, and when you love it, it's like, it's everything. It's the best, right? So when he finally tried that, he went to the garage sale and bought a couple sets of clubs, and I remember I had a 3-wood and a 5-wood and a 3, 5, 7, 9-iron and a putter, and just went to town.
I saw a meme the other day, and it was talking about like learning golf as a kid, and it's like, here is your dad who slices it off the tee and complains, teaching you how to play. How did you go learning when your dad didn't really have a background in it and would have been learning himself? Or is that part of why you got good, because you weren't poorly influenced, shall we say, from maybe an adult who didn't really know what they were talking about?
Well, and it's interesting. My dad was really focused on developing his own game. Yeah. So he didn't really have time to worry about me, because he was trying to figure out how he could get good enough to beat his buddies, right? So I started at 11 and just naturally picked it up. And that's something that I've been really, looking back in everything that I've tried as in my life as sports, I'm pretty fortunate to have, be picking things up and be pretty decent at anything that I've tried, but golf was different. And, it naturally felt good, man. I got goosebumps thinking about it. It's, when you hit a good golf shot, man, like there's absolutely nothing like that feeling. But,
Yeah.
yeah, it was something that just naturally came to me. And I never even took a lesson until, I was about 13 or 14, and we went through like this group where they taught us how to, grip the club properly and stuff like that. But I never got taught anything other than that. And, I started when I was 11 years old, and by the time I was 12, I was beating my dad and his buddies.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just something where, it was just, I didn't really try that hard or put much effort into it, and just was naturally pretty decent at it.
That's really cool. I remember seeing a coach talking about everyone's got a natural golf swing within them. And often
Mhm.
golf coaches are overcomplicating it. So you managed to find that pretty quickly. Now, we talked before we jumped on about something else, and I said, oh, you must be a big picture visual thinker. What I've found of those sort of type of people, particularly in sport, they have the ability to watch, observe, and repeat. So would that make sense for you, that like you could watch a good swing, and then you might not even be conscious of it at that age, but you were just replicating what you'd seen good players do?
Yeah, and I don't even know is that I'm a big time like the big picture for sure. And I am very much into like the visualization and seeing things,
Yeah.
but also the feel. Like for me, it was all the feel. And if I could like feel my hands in the right spot, or if I did something right, I was like, oh, I can do that again. And I would
Right.
do it. And I'm like, oh shit, it actually worked. Right. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I didn't know if I was doing it like properly, but
Yeah.
it felt really good and it was working. So I'm like, I'll give it a try.
Love it. And I think that's a great lesson you can apply across all different areas. Is like people can get too caught trying to work out what's the right way to do it. But there's always a more natural way to do it. And yes, you can take tips and structure and ideas from different people, but ultimately it's tapping into that part. So I love that description. And I think not all athletes, because a lot of people do it in a different way, but I've heard a lot of people describe that's how I would describe when I'm running. It's very much by feel, not by data.
Mm,
So is that something you
yeah.
apply to other areas of your life as well?
100%. And I love that you brought up running because I'm a big time runner as well. I love doing, running events, triathlon. And that's where, something where, when things just click, it's like when you can get that feeling. But there's a lot of people, and in a lot of ways where it's like they'll do something, but they can't repeat that. And I've recognized where it is kind of, it's a natural ability for me to be able to, find something, feel it, and find it again, which is, I think is what help reach that kind of like that pinnacle in my golf career, and start to really adapt at that level. But one thing about golf too, as you probably know, sometimes things that feel really good, they actually don't work worth a shit. And it's like, man, like, why can't I figure this out? It feels like I'm doing it right, and you're not. So,
Yeah.
it does kind of work both ways as well.
100%. That's what we need, to have that guidance, and maybe someone, an outside perspective, or at least a video of the swing. Now, in our day-to-day life, we can't always have a video of what's going on, but definitely having someone to bounce things off, like a golf coach, is
Oh
going to be
man,
hugely beneficial, right?
totally. Well, and it's you touching on that is something that I've been really looking into and thinking about, and it's just how much golf relates to life,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
it's like there's so many synchronicities, and even just you touching on that too. You think about, I mean, you're a coach, I'm a coach. A lot of times we can't see what's going on in our own life
Yeah,
when we're just literally trying to live it, when we're in it. So
yeah,
having that outside perspective and being able to see it, and golf, life, same thing. I can't see what I'm doing wrong when I'm swinging, and even take your video and go and look. If you don't know what to look for,
yeah.
you still don't know what you're doing. So, having that outside perspective from somebody who knows and can help you is a that's a huge asset.
100%. And making me think two things. One, I need to go get some golf coaching. So probably works for all areas, right? So it's like I'm often talking about it from the other direction. But two, it's like the listeners, it's all well and good to have some skills and ideas to have self-awareness, and they are important, no doubt. But having someone in your life that you can like bounce things off and have the mirror, it's just invaluable. And I've had two meetings this morning, for example. One was someone that I've done a lot of stuff we've worked with together before in corporate, and we're doing another project together now. And so that was more of a like, well, how can we be helping each other? And then another one where I'm talking to a guy who's been in business for a lot longer than me, and he knows about a whole lot of different things that I'm not familiar with, and he's got a lot of great connections. Like, again, that's another great way of being, for me to be able to learn, is to be able to have that ability just to get things out of my head and have someone be able to make sense of it. So powerful.
Yeah.
So how do you go from that level of play? Well, how did you go from being good to sort of that next level good where you're actually hitting scratch and beyond?
That's a good one. I didn't actually get really good until later. I would, and later meaning 15, 16, 17 years old through high school. Because I didn't play. I mean, baseball was my sport. I loved baseball. I was a left-handed pitcher, and it was a pretty rare, it's pretty rare to have a left-handed pitcher, especially one with a really mean curveball. So it's funny. I actually forgot about this when we were talking before the podcast about, things that had happened, in sports wise, but I was invited to an Atlanta Braves baseball camp when I was 15 years old as a left-handed pitcher.
No way.
And and I didn't go because we had a family trip planned across Canada. And, it was, it was just kind of one of those things. As I look back, I'm like, oh, fuck, like, I wonder what would have happened. Right. But anyways, so baseball was what's that?
You get in that system. Like, who knows what you're capable of?
100%. And, and in baseball too, it's late bloomers as well. So, having access to that as a young kid, like, that would have been pretty cool. But, I chose to go, well, I'll say chose, but was kind of, pushed into going on holiday with my family across the country. And it was the first time I'd done that. So I look back going like, oh, but baseball was my first sport. So I didn't really go all in on golf until I was about, 16, 17 years old.
The most interesting part of that is the fact that when I asked you about some of your sporting background, that didn't come up. Well, I think that's what you were saying when you thought of it, right? It's like,
I'm like, how did I not even think about that?
Just one of those things you've suppressed just in case it brings up bad memories.
I'm like, oh, there's a trauma. I better go face that here after the call.
Oh, very good. So then you kind of get pushed into it. Is that because your dad was like seeing that you were better than him, and he's like, "Well, you must be pretty good then," or is it like just a culmination of a whole lot of different things?
It was kind of one of those things where I knew that baseball kind of was starting to slow down where I was at, and I was still naturally pretty decent at golf, and I got down to about a 9 handicap. Yeah. And if anyone who doesn't know what a handicap system is in golf, it's a way to make it so that anyone can play against anyone, and they can compete against each other. And I was about a 9 handicap, which is, still like the top, probably like the top 10 to 15% of all golfers of all time, out there in the world.
Yeah.
But that year I got a job at the golf course and started working out there, and I just played and I practiced, and again, didn't take any lessons, but naturally just the more that I played, the more confident that I got, and I dropped down to like a 2 handicap.
Repetition.
Like 7 strokes in that summer. And that's when I realized that there was an opportunity to go, to take this as a career. And there was a school not. Yeah. So I hadn't really taken any lessons, but just naturally by playing and practicing, I got my handicap down from a 9 to a 2, and started to be pretty competitive in in the area that I was in. So, that was then when I realized that they had a golf school not too far from me, about 6.5 hours away by car. And they had a golf school where I could take business management, and it was catered around the golf business and running my own pro shop and golf course with food and beverage management and accounting and all of that stuff. So I was like, this is a pretty good opportunity. And then that summer I went through my playing ability test to get my pro card at 19 years old, and ended up getting it. And it was a pretty fast transition, a span of about 2 years where I literally, like, my game transformed.
Wow. And the things that, as I'm listening to you rattle off those things that they were teaching you, like, they'd just be things that would be so necessary for you to become a golf pro. But also what struck me is, why are we not building this into, I mean, we all ask this question all the time, right? Why are they not building those sort of skills more readily into education, into other areas of our upbringing, so that we have an understanding, so that people don't go into the wider world and then have to work those skills out either the hard way from huge mistakes, which can sometimes cost them time, money, relationships, all sorts of things. Like, what a blessing for you to go through at that age.
Yeah, 100%. No, it was, something that, and again, like, I mean, being, 18, 19 years old, going through all of that and almost being oblivious to, to life, trying to, live on my own for the first time, and, take business management, and then, navigate all of everything that came with, college and having to make money and pay bills and all of that stuff. It was, it's an interesting challenge.
Absolutely. And if you think about those transferable skills, is there something that you learned there non-golf related from that time that you still know that is important for what you do today?
Yeah. I mean, as I look back, there was so many, just, how to enjoy the moment, and how I didn't do that for so long. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I looked ahead, I was like, oh man, I can't wait till I'm more independent. I can't wait till I go, to go to college. And now I can't wait till I get a job. And now I can't wait to this and this and this. And I'm like, man, I had some pretty amazing moments in my life that I glossed over because I was so worried about the next thing, and recognizing that I actually wasn't truly fulfilled, or allowed myself to be fulfilled in those moments, because, I had achieved a lot. And when I did, it was kind of like, well, so what? I intended to do that. So what's next?
Yeah, it's good. It made me think of something one of my coaches told me 11 years ago now, and said that I'm a presence junkie. So I had the opposite problem at that point. I was too in the now, that I wasn't making any plans for the future, and like just sort of drifting from here to there to everywhere. And it's like, yeah, wow, that's so true. So I think what just from listening to you now, it's like every type of person has something that comes naturally, but on the flip side, there's always a trade-off for that. So it doesn't mean that your own skill set or experience is necessarily bad. It's just you've got heaps of good stuff out of it. Well, what if you learned some of those gaps? Then what would be possible? And I think that's sort of what, from what you're saying there, that's really, really struck me. And what did that change for your life to be able to find more of that living in the now? I mean, on the golf course, I think that must just have been a really critical skill. That would have flowed through to all areas of life, would it not?
Yeah, and you know what, I got to be where, when I was golfing, presence was a superpower, right? Being able to be in the now, and not focusing on other people and the scores, and like, oh man, I just made a double bogey. I did have a super bad temper, so I mean, I can touch on that later, but just being in that moment where I could be that person where I was like focused so much on the game, and where I would say I was pretty arrogant, and I never had a beer on the golf course, never even had a drink. And, I was so focused on that being, proving myself in that way, that became my identity. And, if I didn't have a good round, or if I struggled on the golf course, it was like, well, who are you now? Like,
Huh.
if you aren't this great player, somebody who everyone's like looking to be this great player, well, who actually are you? And that was where, my lack of presence off the golf course was like, well, what happens if my golf game goes away, or what happens if I'm not here anymore? Then who am I going to be? And I actually had to face that, after my life in golf.
Yeah. Let's dig a bit more into that, because I know I've had
Yeah.
conversation with plenty of people around, well, like, who are you? And then they go straight to that, or I'm a dad, I'm a husband or a wife or whatever it is, or on this career. No, no, no. Who are you beyond that? And sometimes it can be really challenging. I know the first time I got asked that question, it was challenging. I even found myself
Yeah.
on podcasts. Oh, so tell us a bit about yourself. And I'd dive into business, or I'd dive into family, or I'd dive into, no, well, who are you? So
Yeah.
how did you overcome that? So you've come off the back of that golf journey and you're questioning your identity. Did you have to go through a really dark time to work that out, or did it sort of come to you through the process?
I had an opportunity when I left the golf industry to get into the oil and gas industry, and it was through my connections that I'd met through being at the golf course. And coming from that, everyone knew me in that industry, where in northern Canada, where I lived, as that golf pro, the guy that was a good golfer. And now I'm coming into a different industry. So I would say I never allowed myself to get into that dark time, because I just went straight into creating this new identity. And I've been a recovering people pleaser and nice guy for my whole entire life, right? So, just it was easy for me to just dive into that, and just go head down, ass up, and really just dig into creating this new identity. And that's what I did.
Yeah, it's good, and we'll get to maybe some of the times where things didn't go so much to plan. But I want to tap more into this golf side of things, because I know there's going to be golfers and or much like myself, like the occasional casual game, and always looking for something that's going to shift the dial, right? So if you look from that perspective of because I imagine as a golf pro, you've taught a lot of range of different sort of golfers. What
Hmm.
is there a tip or a couple of tips that you felt had the biggest impact for no matter what level of golf, around whether that was technically, mental, process, that people can get some of your wisdom here?
Yeah, and I mean, looking back, it's taken a lot to kind of like see what the main what one of the main issues and symptoms are. And if you don't believe, it, you're screwed, right? It's kind of like, and it's no, again, how this equates to life. It's like, if I go in there and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna hit a bad shot, or I don't want to hit it into the water, I don't want to hit it into the sand, or oh man, like I don't want to hit it into the trees.
Yeah.
That's exactly where you're gonna hit it. Or it's like, oh, I don't want to hit this one fat, or I don't want to hit it thin. It's like, you're going to hit it fat or thin. It's 100% guaranteed. And that's the thing with golf, is like, if I think bad, I can guarantee it's going to be bad. But
Yeah.
if I think that positive, and believe in myself that I can do something, and visualize it and see it, you can actually do it. And that's the only way that you can actually do it. And again, with life too, instead of looking, at all of the negatives or what can go wrong, what about the things that can go right? So I know that
Yeah.
that doesn't really have like a golf tip, like, hey, put your ball position in the middle of your stance, or like, don't move your head. Like those things obviously are work. But if you believe that you're going to hit a shitty shot, you're going to hit a shitty shot. And that equates in all areas of your life.
Oh, what you said there is brilliant. And I think it is very relevant for golf. One of my favorite golf books is Golf Flow Dr. Gio Valiante, I think his name is, and he talks about a couple of things that you've talked about, which is you're playing against yourself. It's your own journey. This is stuff that I use in my training now, right? It's the same sort of thing. And then what you described, if you focus on more of the negative, you're going to get more negative. If you're standing in front of this big water hazard and you're just going, oh, I hope I don't hit the water hazard, you are going in that water hazard. It's like a magnet.
Yeah.
And that's
Or
true.
if you got a, you got a 2-foot putt and you're like, oh man, I hope I don't miss this 2-foot putt. It's like, you have no chance. You have zero chance of making that putt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still use that mindset around that golf flow book talked about. Is like, you got to detach from the outcome. You got to wash that shit off, and it's just like, it will be whatever it will be. But if you get so caught in the what ifs and the what if this happens, and we're really good at that as humans, aren't we? We're really good at coming up with every reason and invention and creation of why things can go wrong. So it's an art form. So tap into some of your knowledge from golf, but also in the work that you do now coaching men. What's the key message to help them to shift that thinking, to shift their mindset so that they can do that in a much more effortless way?
Oh man, it's just the lead up into that is such a powerful piece. I had I'll share a story. I played with a pro. He was one of the best players in the country. Yeah. And he said to me one time, he's like, Kevin, he's like, you're just hitting it. You're focusing too much. You're trying to like hit it at the hole instead of focusing on the process. He's like, you have such a good swing. You have such a good putting stroke. He's like, focus on the process and doing the proper things and that technique. Focus on your technique, pick your target, pick your line, and just go for that. When you do that, you are going to make putts. You are going to hit amazing shots, but you're still going to do that. And even if you miss, because you're actually focusing on the process and hitting your spots, you can that's a takeaway. Like you can be happy with that. And you can shoot 100 or shoot 1,000,000 and you're still going to be okay because you still hit exactly how you wanted to, because that was your intention. And I think that, with my clients and how I coach and the whole process of it is like, yeah, there's these outcomes that we want to achieve, but by going through the process and setting those intentions and following through on those, the process could be completely different when we get there. But man, what a journey, because we've allowed ourselves to, follow through and be who we said we wanted to be. And that, I think that's, I'm going to mic drop it there.
Yeah, that's so good. Especially the part that you said about, even if it goes wrong, you'll feel good about the fact that you stuck to your process and you gave yourself every chance. You've given yourself the self-control. And I think if people are listening, and whether it's golf, but more importantly, the rest of their life, it's like, you can't guarantee outcomes. It's like,
one of the things that, I can remember playing with so many people over my career, and I'd be like, hey man, good shot. And they're like, oh, I hit it off the toe, or I hit it off the heel, or, oh, I didn't hit it perfect. I'm like, man, it's straight down the middle. It's still pretty good. And they're like, they were complaining about it. Right. And I can remember a mentor that I had in golf, and he's like, you know what, Kevin, he's like, it's not how good your good ones are. He's like, nobody's going to hit it perfect every time. It's not how good your good ones are. It's how good your bad ones are. So that is the process, right? It's like, when you're practicing and you're hitting, and even when you're mishitting it, it's when your bad ones are still good. Those are the guys that win. And it's how good your misses are, right? And anytime, if I even miss one or I hit it like shit and somebody said, good shot, I said, thank you.
That's the mic drop moment for me, because that ties into people pleasing. It ties into lifting your base level. Oh, that's so good. So good. And
yeah, man, I
got
the chills. My heart's pounding after that
one. That's brilliant. Because as you were talking, I was thinking, I'm a recovering people pleaser as well. And I've worked so hard to receive, to the smallest compliment. Someone wants to pay. Like, it's not my place to tell them not to. Like, if they want to gift me that, cool. You give and give and give in all these different places. You've got to get better at receiving. But on the golf course, I do that. I'm searching for perfection all the time, which is ridiculous given the standard that I'm at. But yeah, it's that if my bad shot's still going there, how good? And one of my football, soccer for your language, philosophies that I've learned is from a guy who's got academies all over the world, but he's got some in Australia, which we use at our local club. And their whole philosophy is if you lift the minimum standard, you lift the whole standard. Mm-hmm. So rather than trying to work at that top end only, let's lift that baseline up of what skill is, whether it's in a club, whether it's in a country, like what he's done in Japan in terms of their elite level players. They win tournaments in all different age groups, male, female. Their male team is probably missing something to get to that next level. But in terms of technical skill, because their whole philosophy of football there is lift that base level. So I just think for people listening, it's like you're going to have good moments. But how you actually get more of that consistency is to lift that base level. So can you give us maybe a bit of an insight around how people would do that for their everyday life? Take it away from golf. How do you lift your base level of what you're capable of as an individual, as an identity?
Man, I can still keep it with golf and life. It's minimizing the damage. Like minimize the damage. In golf, if you hit a bad shot and you hit it into the woods and you have like a hero shot where there's a 6-inch gap where you can make this shot, but then if you miss it, you're gonna shoot an 8 or 9 or 10, or it's just gonna be a nightmare. It's minimizing the damage. So with life, to take it back to life too, is like, don't keep forcing things to try and make it a certain way by doing the same things. It's like minimize the damage. If something's going on, stop and take a pause, look and see how you can have a way out, look in the mirror and figure out what it is that you're not seeing. And like having a coach or having a mentor, even just taking that breather and looking in the mirror and going like, where can I be better? You're minimizing the damage.
So good. And it plays into that adage that I've heard a lot recently is people saying you should never quit. It's like, nah, sometimes you actually need to walk away. Sometimes it's not the right place. It's not the right time.
Yeah, there's a surrender piece, and even the greatest warriors, the greatest armies, they surrender when it's in the best interest for the country or for their tribe. And it's no different, alone, right? It's like, sometimes it's time to surrender and go back to the drawing board, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just the nature of it.
I don't know if you can hear that thudding, but my dog's agreeing because he must be dreaming or something, but he's banging up and down.
I can't hear anything, so it's still good.
Good. You talked about visualization, and something that stuck with me. Well, I learned visualization through football. Of course, I learned it way too late in my career for it to have a significant impact on where I would have gone with football, but it certainly made my last years playing so much better because I found this concept of visualization, found myself doing things on the field that I'd always struggled with, but now they were just coming second nature. And I reference often that quote from Jack Nicklaus, and he said, I've never played a shot before that I haven't watched the movie of that shot in my head first, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't guarantee a result, but you give yourself the best chance. I don't know if you've seen the clip doing the rounds on socials where it's at some it's a charity day or something that's been televised, and this guy's got he's about 40 meters out. So what's that? About maybe 100 foot. And he said, "What sort of shot am I going to play from here?" And Jack says, "You just putt it." It's like,
you just putt it. Yeah.
What do you mean?
And
what do you mean?
It.
He goes, "You show me." So Jack walks up there and he rolls in this 100-foot putt from like miles off the green, and it just goes the whole way in, and the crowd goes crazy. It's like, well, what are the chances? Well, but no, it's not a fluke. One, he's got ability, but it's that visualization piece. It's amazing how beneficial it is.
Yeah. I heard, I read I don't remember. I can't remember it was a book that I read in college and when I was taking the golf program, and it talked about a story about Jack Nicklaus, and he was playing with a guy, and Jack hits his shot up on a par three, and his playing partner hits his shot up on the par three, and they get walking up to the green, and Jack goes in and he putts in and makes his birdie, and he looks over to his playing partner and he goes, hey, what'd you have there? Because they keep each other's score. He's like, hey, what'd you have there? And the guy looks at him with this look on his face and goes, Jack, I had a 1. He got a hole in 1, and he was so focused he was completely zoned into his own game, man. I got the chills just thinking about that. It was incredible, and I can't remember the book, but yeah, it was something else.
But again, like the application to day-to-day life, you see now with social media and even just in your local neighborhood, how often are you getting caught in, look what that person's doing?
Yeah.
And you lost. So I'm not taking it to that depths that I don't even notice my partner get a hole in 1 because I want to celebrate.
Yeah, totally.
But
absolutely.
But in terms of like just the concept of it, dialing in a stronger focus on your own game so that what's going on for other people is not dragging you down. Oh man, that is cool. That's focus.
Yeah, I'll say, man. And like that visualization is so powerful, and especially in the game of golf, right? Just being able to see those shots and have that creativity. And I think that, in life, that's something that we don't tap into enough anymore. Like you think about when we were kids and, coloring and creating and drawing and talking about our dreams and stuff like that. Not enough people do that anymore. In adulthood, it gets lost. And, it's something that, that I've really been working into. And I remember like my partner, Kelly, she asked me one time after, when we first got together, and she's like, I've chased my dreams and I've accomplished this. I've traveled the world and I went to NCAA and played Division I volleyball and I've accomplished all of my dreams. And she goes, Kevin, what are some dreams you have? And I go, I don't know. No one's ever asked me.
Wow.
And I was like, I actually like choked up thinking about it. I'm like, why the fuck didn't anyone ask me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I become a dreamer at 40 years old, and I feel like now I'm really truly starting to do that, and I want to help others do the same thing.
Oh, now I'm getting the goosebumps because that was exactly my journey. Like, why did anyone show me this? Like, I'd never set goals. I didn't even know how. Like, and the very thing that we teach, right, is we get so good at it because no one's ever showed us, and we find out all we can about it.
Yeah.
And like, I was not a dreamer, I was a drifter. I'd convince people that drifting was good because it was to a certain level. It was comfortable, but geez, it was boring. No fulfillment. Now I know that's something that you're passionate about, right? Finding that fulfillment.
Yeah.
So how do people find more fulfillment when they're not dreaming?
I think it's doing the things that you want to do. And that's like, I can think back and, it's a practice. And I mean, I'm far from having it figured out. But the more that I, think about the things that I want to do that I haven't done, the more that I do them, the more fulfilled I am. And looking at the things that I shied away from or that I was like afraid of, and going, my fear or my resistance to those things is why it's necessary for me to try them and look into them and what it is that's holding me back. And the more that I do that, the more that I face myself and face my fears and look at that man in the mirror, it's there's that fulfillment. And, I, like you said too, we've trialed and erred, and we know how not to do things. So I'm going to continue to do that. And I'm going to take everything that I've learned and everything that I pick up, and I'm going to help people fast track so they don't have to do that. Right. And face the hardships that, like you and I have.
Yeah. And I know you help people with purpose as well. And to me, that's the essence of purpose is if you can help someone with the very thing that you struggle with, is there anything more fulfilling than that? So that they don't have to go through the pain you went through.
Yeah. I can't think of anything. It's one of the things that I've actually struggled with this as well because I think about like, oh man, I'd like to make more money, and I want to grow my business, and I want to take this mainstream, and but my whole mission was, if I can help one person by sharing my story so that they don't have to suffer in the same way that I did. And I mean, I had a pretty great life and pretty blessed life in a lot of ways, but there's always pain and suffering in certain ways. And if I can help with one person by sharing my story, then then my mission is complete. And I've done far greater than that. So it's really something that I have to come back to too and be like, what is the mission? What is that purpose? And continuing to do that. And I do believe that everything will start to flow the more that I stay consistent, just like working on my golf swing. And that's what I'm going to keep doing.
Do you still work on your golf swing now?
Not as much as I should. It's one of those things too. Like, if I'm being completely honest, I lost the urge to play.
Interesting.
I played lots of competitive golf over the years, and it's just one of those things where when I get out to the golf course and play, I absolutely love it. And it's a completely different sport for me because I just love being out there and the feeling of it and the grass and the sun and, like all of that stuff. But to get myself to go out there and play, I'm like, oh, it takes 5 hours. And if I'm gonna do that, I'd maybe go for a bike ride or, something like that.
Is there part of it, like we talk a lot about comparison and comparing to other people, but this is something that I picked up from a client recently. It's the unfair comparison with who we used to be. Now, imagine for you who's playing at pro level golf, there must be part of that comes into it too, right? The level you used to play. Is it hard to sort of lower your standards that you're aiming for, or are you still in your head trying to hit those same standards?
It really is. I'm a realist too. Like, I know, and I've said this too. When you don't play and you don't practice, you're not going to be as good, right?
Yeah,
so when I do go out and play and I hit these shots and I'm like, oh man, like it's still there. Like, there's some shots that I hit and I'm like, man, like this is really good. But then all of a sudden I'll like hit one and I'm like, oh, I never used to do that, right? And it's something like that too. But I used to be a terrible person to play with. And when I was young, like I had such a competitive streak and was a poor sport that, I had one of our members one time, he's like, hey, you know what? You're great, but I'm not going to play with you anymore because you got a bad attitude.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, as that people pleaser, that nice guy, man, that destroyed me. So, I did what I could to try and learn how to be a better person on the golf course. But man, like I can remember, I can remember one time I missed a chip on the last hole and I just went to I grabbed my sand wedge and I went to just flex the shaft.
Yeah.
And I did it pretty hard and it broke and it cut my arm.
Oh,
the broken shaft cut my arm. And here I am walking off the golf course with my arm bloody. And I'm going, who are you? Like, is this the person that you want to be? Like, golf, big deal. You want to be a good man and, somebody that's respected and, start, leading by example. This is not how you do that. And that, that moment actually changed how I navigated my own golf career and, how I went about life in general.
Oh, that's good. And it's a recurring theme. The guest I had, the previous recording, he was a elite level coach, and he talked about learning that same lesson in basketball. He said, like, I'm not playing you today. The coach said, I'm not playing you today. And he's like, hang on, I'm the star. Like, I score all these points and don't like what your attitude's at the moment. And it's like, that can be a real slap in the face, but sometimes those slaps in the face can end up being the greatest lesson that we ever learned, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was like one of those things where, it just puts everything in a perspective, right?
Yeah.
The game of golf actually means nothing, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty fortunate to be able to, to get to a level, but, I played with guys that absolutely destroyed me And when there was people that were looking at me going, "Oh man, why didn't you go play the PGA Tour and stuff like this?" I'm like, because I've played with some of those guys, and if I could commit, and if I fully did, there might be an opportunity for that. But I just there was some things that held me back, and my own beliefs and fear and insecurities, and like this reasoning that it just wasn't in me to do that, not at that point. So I still think about that too. But I played with a guy that played 57 events on the PGA Tour, and he was one of the top players in the country, and he still couldn't compete.
Yeah, wow. There's plenty of nice guys, right? But if you think about that story with Jack, I reckon you need to be wired a bit differently to go to the next level. And I don't know if you've heard the story about Michael Jordan when they were at the Olympics. Charles Barkley tells the story, and they played golf in the morning of the game. They were playing a team that they should have beaten comfortably. And Michael says, "Oh, we'll play 36 holes." And they're walking. And he's like, "No, we've got a game tonight." He's like, "No, we'll be fine." And then he demands to mark this particular person on the opposition because he talks some shit about him in the press or something. And then he went around chasing this guy around the court for the whole match. And even Charles, who would have had a fair bit of like drive within him, obviously, for the career he had, he reckoned he looked at Karl Malone, who he'd played golf with, and said, "This guy's not normal. Like, there's something wrong with it. He's mental." Mm-hmm. Like, that's a different sort of level of drive. And I think, like, I can't comprehend that level of drive that you're missing your playing partner playing a hole in one. Now, that's not to say that there's anything necessarily wrong with different people who have been successful, but there's definitely a different ability to be able to focus and concentrate. And I imagine that's going to have a bit of a trade-off, like with everything.
Yeah, I agree. And you think about these generational players, right? Michael Jordan, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods. They're a completely different mindset, animal, like the way to get into that spot. Like, when Tiger Woods was at the top of his game, there was absolutely nobody that could touch him. No. And he knew that.
Yeah.
And when you have that, there's a lot that comes with it, as you've seen, like his fall from grace, right? Yeah. So, I do think that there's a sort of a wounding around that, where there's this insatiable need to be that best. And it's amazing to watch, but yeah, I can honestly say that, I'm pretty grateful that I'm not like that.
I won't pretend to be an expert in the psychology of those elite athletes, but it is fascinating. And I think if we take that as something we look at our own life, it's like, careful about what we're aspiring to be, because you want to make sure it's actually in alignment with the sort of person that you are. And stripping it down to that sort of basic level, I think that's something that everyone can take learning from.
Yeah, like I can say that relating to, not that I'm going to put myself in the same league as Michael Jordan, but
but you
it
are.
Was like it was it was never enough, right? Even for him, winning all those championships was never enough. Just like, for me, just going after that next level, not being full and complete in my heart. It was, it's a constant chase, and that's, it's something that's, you really never catch it, and it just catches up to you.
I think we've all got a bit of that in something.
For sure.
Maybe that's part of the lesson, is to learn what that is for you and realize that there might be some gaps there that you're missing.
Yeah.
Now, I talk a lot about self-belief, and you were talking before about that tip for golf. You just got to believe in yourself. Now, how do people believe in themselves? Because there might be someone listening going, yeah, well, I've tried believing in myself more, but how do I actually do that? So what's the how of that, Kevin?
Yeah, that's one that I'm even still chasing myself, right? But the belief that you can always get better, right?
Love it.
Owning where you're at, and that's that's the thing, right? I'm, I remember one old member, he came in and he was pulling his golf cart and it had one wheel. And I'm like, Ed, what happened to your golf cart? He's like, oh, I fucking smashed the wheel off it because I hit it into the water and I made a 12 and, I shot 100. And I'm like, Ed, I've watched you play. You're supposed to hit shots like that. Like you're supposed to shoot 100. You don't practice. You're like, 80 some years old and that's just your game. You're
Yeah,
supposed to hit shots like that. But he wasn't being realistic with himself. He thought that he should be shooting in the 70s, right? So,
yeah,
it's that belief in yourself is, where am I at? And just owning it. And if I want to be better, I just need to work on the skills. I need to, practice. I need to, maybe hire a coach or a mentor or, a teacher, whatever that is, or, take a program or, something, right? But
yeah.
believing yourself, I think, starts with just taking radical ownership of who you are and where you're at, and just keep doing that work to get to where you want to be.
Fascinating. I've never heard that expression before, except now I've heard it twice in 24 hours. Radical ownership or radical responsibility.
Love it.
Yeah. And it's really confronting for people to hear. And I say to people, can be the most challenging thing you will ever do, but also the most freeing, is to take 100% ownership of everything. And that's why it's radical, I guess. It's like, even the shit where you feel like that is not my fault, how can I possibly take ownership? Well, you don't have to, but when you do, you take back full control of your future, right?
100%. And if you're involved, you have a part in it,
Yeah,
right? And taking ownership. And I mean, it's easy to be like, oh, that person's just an asshole, or they're not treating me very well, or they hurt me, or this situation didn't work out, right?
hmm.
Well, there's also a lead up into that's your responsibility. And when you do that, it frees you.
Yeah. Well said. Now, we share something that you described before, which is that temper. And for me, it used to come out in the sporting field as well. And I'd spent a lifetime developing skills and strategies. And it was one I battled with a long time. It still needed a way out. And
Yeah.
even now, I'm like, I've been teaching this one thing for the last few years and it's been working. But even that's got a limit. And then I'm realizing, wow, like anger still finds its way to me. So again, it's one of those things that I'll endlessly pursue new learnings, because here I was thinking I'd solved it all. But of course, the moment you say that, you're going to turn around the next corner and something's going to bite you on the ass. So what's your best tip for people as someone who's had challenges with that? And I imagine, given the role you do now, that you've come up with a heap of strategies to help deal with it.
Yeah. The first thing is, how often, I think about how I'm going to just say men in general have been shamed for anger,
Yeah.
so being, showing it, but it's because it shows up in those spaces, right? Smashing my golf clubs on the ground or throwing them into a tree, or, like smashing people in like a fun game of hockey, right?
Yeah.
It shows up in destructive ways. But anger is a natural emotion, so it is meant to be felt. But it's when it's buried and pushed down is when it starts to show up in those other areas. So recognizing what it is that's causing that anger and where you're starting to feel it, and being able to have a space to healthily express that, right? They have these rage rooms for a reason, right? It's that there's power in that. And like I really like doing physical stuff, like going to the gym or going for a run. Going for a run is like my way of processing a lot of things.
Yeah.
I like to go out into the woods and just scream at the top of my lungs and yell, and
Yeah.
or if you've never done kickboxing or like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, something like that, where you can like go as hard as you want, it's super empowering. And especially when you get to punch and kick things and it's in a safe and healthy way, man, it really helps a lot.
Oh, I think the bit that I took out of that, because all of those things, I've used a lot of those things as well, but that last thing, in a safe environment, like
Yeah.
finding a safe place that you can express your anger is so important. And in a world where, yeah, we've been led to believe that there isn't safe places and that it's bad, and even to the depth of people go like talk about revenge, and they're like, oh,
Mhm.
that's evil, you can't deal with your revenge. It's like, yeah, but what if you actually feel it? Because people do, they might not
Yeah.
want to admit it, but it's the same thing. It's like, of course, don't act out your anger or your revenge or your rage on other people in a way that you know is going to hurt them and you. But it doesn't mean you're just invalidating yourself, and that hurts even more.
Totally, man. You get the worst thing that we can do as individuals is shame ourselves for what we're feeling and what we're going through,
Yeah,
because they're when you feel it, it's real. You can't you can't justify, anything else. It's just when you're feeling it, it's legit. And there's when you shame yourself or you get shamed by other people, there's there it doesn't help anyone. And I feel like that's one of the biggest problems that so many of us go through is the shame and guilt of feeling what we're feeling, and recognizing that we're meant to feel it.
yeah, yeah. I've got a couple more areas that I wanted to dig into, Kevin, if that's okay. And
Let's
and
do
one of
it.
them is something we talked about before we jumped on. Now, for people who are outside of Winter Olympics types parts of the world, this one is a cracker. My only memory of curling is like whenever the Winter Olympics would come on, we'd see it and we might make a few jokes about it if we were holding a broom or anything like that. But tell us, because it looks like it's a sport, but it's an art, right? Like, tell us a little bit about this sport. And I imagine, given that a lot of the other games you play, force and power are involved, this would require a whole lot of like a vast array of different skills from a mental perspective, at least.
Oh man, it's in Canada, if you golf, it used to be where if you were a curler, you were also a golfer. So you'd see each other on the golf course in the summer and on the curling ice in the winter. But the golf curling it's an amazing sport. It really is. And when you get into it, like just the strategy, the visualization, the conversations and the communication that happens between the two teams, between like people that are watching, because everyone has an opinion and sees different things. So it's
Yeah,
pretty powerful. And just even the strategy behind it. And it doesn't look like it might not look like it on TV, but when those guys are sweeping at full blast, you're literally working every single muscle that you have for anywhere from 15, 20 to 25 seconds for 3 hours. It's on
right.
off, on off, on off. So it's a ton of work, and they play a lot of games, but just the strategy behind it, and everything that's involved. They've even had to modify the game and the rules because guys are getting so good at like outsmarting it, and just like throwing the technical ability. It's pretty powerful. So I was pretty fortunate to play at a high level when I was younger, and yeah, watching some of the guys that I played with and against compete, at the Olympics and for world championships. So it's a pretty cool story that I can tell.
Very cool. And what was your role in the team?
So I was a lead, and when I was 19, so that was my last year in juniors, and we played for a national championship, and lost in a tiebreaker to go to the semifinals to the world champion. He was a two-time world champion, and we lost in an extra end, which is overtime in curling. So that's kind of my claim to fame in curling, and yeah, it was pretty special for me.
All right, you're gonna have to give us a bit more information on that. Which one was the lead? The one that's actually
He throws. I throw first, so it's probably the least. So throwing first, so you kind of set up the ends, and
oh,
then
so
I
hang
was
on.
yeah.
Everyone plays all the different roles.
So there's four players on the team, and
Yeah.
each
Yeah.
throws two stones per end. So I was the
Right.
lead. Then
Got it.
there's the second. Then there's the third. Then there's the skip. So I threw the first stones every end, and then I swept the rest. And I was really strong sweeper, And I would say like that was one of our strengths as a team was our ability to sweep. And one of the guys that I played on the team, he's a multi-time world champion and Olympic gold medalist. And then his brother, who's a really good friend of mine, they both played in the Canadian Championships here just this past weekend. So pretty special to watch those two guys, compete with the top players in the world, and even just to be connected with them is pretty special for me.
Amazing. Now, I think most people with any sort of athletic or sporting prowess has had this thought: what if? Now, you've come closer than most in 3 different disciplines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Baseball, you got a chance to go to the Braves as a kid. You've hit that level of curling. Your golf, you're playing at a pro level. Now, I know different level of pros, and you said you won a lot of tournaments in your local area, and you even finished top 25. And was it the Canadian TPC? Did you say
the Canadian Assistance Championship in Niagara Falls?
Yeah, right.
In 2003. Yeah.
So that's like at a high level, but still not quite high enough. How often do you think about what if, and how do you rationalize that?
I don't think about it as often anymore, but I like to do a lot of reflecting on those what ifs, and then ask the whys as well. As like,
Yeah.
why didn't I do that, or why didn't I go for that? And I look back and I know that there's a lot of people that are going to relate to this, and it was fear. What if I don't? What if I can't? What if I can't do it, right? If I was to go 100% all in on myself and I can't do that, am I going to be able to handle that? And at that time, I don't know if I could. So, it was almost like easier in quotations to not do it, so that I could make an excuse, being like, oh, I didn't want to have to struggle and like sleep in my car, like I've heard many tour players talk about, or whatever. But I will say that if I'm being like 100% radically honest with myself, I was afraid to give it a try and do my best. And that fear of success is sometimes even it's a real thing. And there's the fear of failure and the fear of success, and I'd say both of them are equally challenging.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think people's fear of success is greater than their fear of failure, from my own personal experience. And I've said that to a few people, and they've gone, there is no way that's true. And then when they've gone away and thought about it, they're like, yeah, you keep moving past the failures, but sometimes that success eludes people. But again, maybe it's then how you're measuring success. As a parent, I'm sure I've referenced this in other chats, but the studies that they've done around how you get the best out of young people, these studies say the same thing. When people are praised for ability, intelligence, things that probably are outside that self-control area, then they will do exactly what you described. They will then, in their next time they're tested, they will perform lower. So rather than try really hard and then fail and feel that, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, they will perform lesser, so that at least they know that there's a reason why, because I didn't put everything into it. Whereas when people are praised for effort and for the work that they put in and for the practice that they did, things that they very much can control, then they're the ones that go on to that next level. Now, this leads beautifully into the other question I wanted to ask. So you've got a couple of kids, you've done some coaching with them. To me, you learn so much more when you're coaching than you do when you're in it. So having raised a couple of kids and in that sporting journey as well, what have you learned about you, the parent, but also you, the coach, and how to help your children to be their best?
Excuse me. I learned that hanging on to some of the things that I didn't do, I put onto my kids, especially my son, who plays, he plays hockey at a and once it says that he wants to play at a high level. And, I've been to a high level in multiple different sports, and I know what it takes to do that. But I also know that I still didn't give it everything that I had and wish that I had. So, in my adult years, like beyond that, I've transformed the way that I show up every day, taking care of myself, competing. Like I started to compete at a different level in my mid to late 30s than I did in my entire life. And that's, why I think that this transformation into coaching and everything is so powerful right now. But, recognizing where, I'm saying to my son going, dude, I recognize how you are me and you're doing the same things that I used to do. I can get you through that into the next level. Just like do this and do this and do this. But then recognizing that his journey and my journey are not the same.
Yeah.
Right. So, having to go back to the drawing board and say, I'm sorry, dude. If you want this, I'm here for you. But if not, like, that's okay. Like, just do the best that you can. That's all. Just don't leave anything on the table where you're going to look back and regret it, because, that I know what that feels like. And, I definitely recognize myself, trying to unlearn and reparent myself, through his eyes. So it's been an interesting journey. So, that's what I will say is, just recognizing myself in my kids and trying not to parent myself and recognize that they're their own people.
Great answer. It's plays into what we were talking about before, is letting go of the things you can't control and focusing on what you can control yourself. And that's one of the also most challenging things you do, is to let go of the rope with your children and let them find their own way. And
the hardest.
Yeah, but also you learn so much when you do. My young fella decided he didn't want to play at a representative level for football anymore. And again, I did exactly what you said. I wanted to make sure he got what I didn't get at that level, which is I wanted him to know that. So why didn't anyone tell me this? They told me later when it's too late. I just wanted to let him know that, look, you do have everything you need to be able to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to say, I'm saying that not just as your dad, but as someone that gets feedback from other people. But it's got to be up to you. And still hard, right, to let go and have him still make the choice that he made. But I know just how much of a better person he is now as a result of that, even if it was frustrating for his mum and dad, because we just want the best for our children, right?
Yeah, man. And I think that one of the biggest things is like, oh man, like all I could think about is like, I know what he's going to feel like if he gives up on himself. I know what he's going to feel like. Right. But then also too, I want to be the dad that I needed when I did that, so it's like you said, it's a tough one, but sometimes, as men too, we're stubborn, right? Sometimes it's like, nobody can stop us from running into that brick wall. We need to feel it before we can understand it. So, sometimes it's like, hey man, I'll be there to wipe you off when you smash into it.
100%. And ultimately that's our job, right? Is to support them on their choices as much as we might have other ideas. We get so much more out of our relationship with them when we're able to let them go and experiment. And to me, that's something that is probably lacking a lot. Is like young people, it's too much of a controlled environment, too much of a, we'll do this for you, we'll do that for you. And when we're not passing on enough of those skills, I think the more that we can empower our children to be able to go and try things themselves instead of doing it for them, as hard as that can be, letting go of control sometimes, it's a really powerful one.
Yeah, it is a powerful one, and it's something that, like you said, we need more people and more men specifically to start thinking outside the box and not being these followers and people that are controlled, right? We need powerful mentors, and a lot of us have never had that, and that's what I'm here to do, and create that ripple effect in leadership and helping young men and men to lead with their hearts, and that's what we need more of in this world, for sure.
Absolutely. Always got to start with yourself. As much as we want to throw money or try and create a fix-it for all these different people in our life, it always comes back to self.
100%.
Kevin, I've loved this chat. I really enjoyed hearing all of your wisdom, particularly the parts I can take from my own golf game from a very selfish perspective. But if I can't get some learning out of this podcast for myself, then what's in it, right? So I appreciate that. I know the listeners, and I'm thinking about a couple of people who I know will be listening from a golf perspective. They would have taken a heap out of this, not so much for their golf, but in terms of their mindset and their thinking and their life in general. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So like I said in the intro, some great strategies there from Kevin to help you in not only your golf, but more importantly, every area of your life. The lesson to take from today's episode and add to your game plan, the importance of not suppressing your emotions, but feeling them, being able to regulate them, because that ability to stay calm is going to help you lift your performance in all areas of your life. It's definitely going to help you on the golf course. It's going to help you even more in your relationships and your career. Now, if you want a specific process to help you with this, I've got one that I developed from years of being an angry dad, of being an angry sports person. And so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, it's a really short visualization process that my clients are getting fantastic results with. Send me your email to my email address, info@ianhawkinscoaching.com, and I will send it straight to you. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.